I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a series review. After watching 6 disappointing episodes of the Disney Star Wars series Ahsoka, I didn't have much hope that episode 7 would be any real improvement, but as a reviewer, I still gave it a fair chance. In this video, I will go over the plot, what I didn't like about the episode, what I did like about the episode, followed by my official score. Episode 7 starts with Hera appearing in front of a Senate committee that will decide if Hera is fit to be a general, and if she'll be court-martialed for going on an unauthorized mission to stop Thrawn. As usual, Hera is arrogant and full of attitude, but Senator Grumpyface isn't impressed. He believes that her story about the space whales, ball map, boss lady Morgan, and Sith guy is complete nonsense. He also isn't convinced that there are any real remnants left from the days of the Empire. On the other hand, Rebel Miyagi, who is also appearing in front of the Senate committee, reminds Senator Grumpyface that Gideon, who we saw in The Mandalorian, was also a remnant from the Empire, but Senator Grumpyface tells him that Gideon had acted alone. While I know that many people actually do know who Gideon is from The Mandalorian, still, it's unclear why this one show has to rely on so many other previous shows and movies and can't just stand on its own in any way, shape, or form. Hera tells Senator Grumpyface that if Thrawn returns there will be trouble, but he tells her that she's abusing her power for personal gain. Personally, I think both of these characters are stupid, much like this entire series. Hera is unlikable and annoying like all the other female characters on this show, and Senator Grumpyface is a dum-dum, so there's really nobody to root for here. Just as it seems like this hearing isn't going well for Hera, C-3PO suddenly arrives to speak on behalf of Leia Organa. Remember C-3PO and Princess Leia? Anyhow, 3PO tells the council that Leia actually sanctioned this mission, so Hera was acting under her orders and the senators should back off. Senator Grumpyface is unhappy about this and says that there is no reason to believe a droid, which upsets Chopper, who is also a droid. This, of course, is Disney's ongoing obsession with humanizing droid and also making them both victims and romantic interests, for whatever reasons. C-3PO, who looks odd on this show for some reason, then says that Leia is the leader of the Defense Council, so the committee has to accept what she says. The council then apparently has no choice but to agree and keep Hera as general, in what has to be one of the dumbest hearings ever committed to screen. One of the reasons this entire scene doesn't work for me is because if this was so important, Leia could have easily phoned in via Zoom call or given C-3PO a hologram message to play for them. I suspect that the C-3PO solution may have had something to do with Carrie Fisher's passing, and the fact that they couldn't or wouldn't use her image and likeness. And while it's not like I was exactly itching to see a CGI Carrie Fisher appear here on this crappy show, the C-3PO workaround is still rather lame. As much as I like Anthony Daniels as C-3PO, I think they should have just used a completely different character for this, as having a droid appear here this way seems like the wrong creative choice. It would have made far more sense if somebody like Luke Skywalker, who was very respected in these circles, would have gotten involved instead. The problem is that Kathleen Kennedy doesn't seem to like it when a male helps a female, so Dave Filoni opted for a droid instead. This is also likely the reason why, in spite of this big crisis, Luke Skywalker on this show is nowhere to be found. Anyhow, after hearing C-3PO talk, Mon Mothma says that the matter is settled and Senator Grumpyface accepts the outcome. Mon Mothma privately talks with Hera and tells her that something is fishy about the whole Leia story, but Hera tells her that the threat of Thrawn is real, so then they both make serious faces. Ahsoka is training with a very CGI-looking de-aged Anakin Skywalker hologram. As a hologram, Anakin warns Ahsoka about the type of dangers she could face, but he also tells her that she's the best. Ahsoka then tells Huyang that Anakin made 20 hologram tutorials, but that this was the last one he made. Ahsoka then says that Anakin was a good master. Huyang tells Ahsoka that the space whales are slowing down, so they are probably nearing their destination, and that the odds of them arriving in the same galaxy as Sabine are very slim. This seems to be a type of callback for Han Solo telling C-3PO never to tell him the odds in Empire Strikes Back, only poorly executed and much less amusing. Finally, Ahsoka and Huyang arrive at the planet where Sabine, Ezra, Thrawn, Boss Lady Morgan, and Sith Guy are all located at, but they seem to be under attack. Ahsoka then exits the space whale's mouth and realizes that they're in the middle of an Imperial minefield. Ahsoka decides to fly into a debris field of space whale remains. This reminds me of the asteroid field Han Solo flies through in Empire Strikes Back, but that whole concept was executed much better than what we see here. That's because in this case, it's not 100% clear what this debris field even is. She's just blindly flying into some kind of abyss, as opposed to Han Solo and the asteroid field. Tesla CEO Grand Admiral Elon Thrawn gets a report from Gold-Faced Trooper that the minefield he set up around the planet was triggered by a ship, which means that Ahsoka is alive and not dead like Sith Guy had initially believed. Boss Lady Morgan gives Thrawn all the info she has on Ahsoka from the Inquisitor database. I guess she's referring to the Inquisitors from Rebels and Clone Wars. Thrawn learns that she was Anakin Skywalker's apprentice, and instead of destroying her, he decides to let Ahsoka hide within the debris. Boss Lady Morgan questions this idea, but Thrawn says that by doing this, they will actually be in control of the situation, and one step ahead of Ahsoka. Ahsoka parks her ship inside the whalebone debris. She says Thrawn is behind this attack. How does she know this? Yeah, don't think about it. Sabine is bringing Ezra up to speed about everything he's missed. She even mentions that Zeb is training recruits, which would only mean something if you actually watched Rebels. Even in this scene, which is supposed to be sentimental, Sabine puts her feet up like a dude, looks like a dude, acts like a dude, because once again, according to Disney, women are dudes now. I guess the fact that there are a bunch of dangerous people on this planet that could come kill her and Ezra at any second isn't really a concern for her, so she doesn't even say anything. Ezra until now seems like such a clueless bum, but he finally asks Sabine how she got there, and she's still wishy-washy, so he changes the subject. Perhaps if Sabine didn't look and act like an annoying little boy, and Ezra wasn't dressed like the owner of a chai shop in New Delhi, they could have built some kind of romantic tension here, but in Disney Star Wars, men and women can't be in a relationship anymore, so we obviously won't see any of that. Sabine then tells Ezra that Ahsoka is training her, which surprises him. Ezra asks Sabine where Ahsoka is, and since Sabine believes that Ahsoka is dead, she tells him it's complicated. This is a very poorly written scene where two boring characters refuse to communicate in any kind of logical way, in the midst of a dangerous situation where time is of the essence. Between the cringy dialogue and horrible acting, this scene could have easily appeared on the CW's Batgirl. Yes, it's that bad. Sith Guy then arrives with the fancy red sand people. Thrawn calls in the Night Sister witches and tells them to locate Ahsoka within the whalebone's debris, so all three witches play with their balls. Again, Ahsoka uses the Force to try and find Sabine. Sabine is surprisingly able to pick up on her, even though she has no connection with the Force, which is kind of weird. Also, why wouldn't Ahsoka try to reach out to Ezra, who actually is a Force user, rather than Sabine, who isn't? Yeah, don't think about that either. The Night Witches use their balls to locate Ahsoka, so Thrawn sends forces to attack her. Ahsoka manages to get away though. Thrawn is happy because they've flushed her out. Sith Guy and Sith Girl locate Ezra Bridger. Sith Guy tells Sith Girl to contact Thrawn and tell him the good news, that this will secure a place for her in the new Empire, but that he himself is on a different path. Once again, the late Ray Stevenson really tries to elevate this poorly written material with solid acting, but this ongoing mystery of what his motivations are is really growing old at this point. Sith Guy then gives Sith Girl one final lesson before they part for good. He tells her, impatience for victory guarantees defeat, which is kind of like saying that water is wet. Thrawn sends his troopers to go after Ezra and Sabine in a cringy battle scene where turtle Ewoks use slings to try and battle with the fancy red sand people. Now I know some will mention how the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi also used primitive weapons, but they were still presented as a more resourceful crew than these guys, and also, Han and Leia were far more interesting characters than Ezra and Sabine. Ezra tells all the turtle Ewoks to get inside their cocoon vehicles so that he can take care of the bad guys who seem to be gaining the upper hand. Meanwhile, Thrawn's backup arrives, along with Ahsoka. Ahsoka decides to jump out of his ship while it's traveling at full speed because, of course she does. Sith Guy is surprised to see Ahsoka alive, so they whip out their lightsabers. Sabine tries to give Ezra his lightsaber to battle the troopers, but he tells her that all he needs is the Force, which is really dumb because you could always use a lightsaber. Ezra then starts Force battling the fancy red sand people, while Sabine uses her blaster to fight them off. And yes, all of this looks as dumb as it sounds. Now Sith Girl confronts Ezra with a lightsaber, and since he wouldn't take his from Sabine, she now has the upper hand. As ships arrive, Sabine tells Ezra, take her, and then she holds on to his lightsaber while Sith Girl tosses him with the Force. Why does Ezra still refuse to take the lightsaber from Sabine? Well, I assume that Disney didn't want there to be a male Jedi that actually does something good with a lightsaber, because only females could do that now. You see, when Kathleen Kennedy said that the Force was female, she meant that shit. Ahsoka and Sith Guy are still at it, but then they reach an impasse and Ahsoka uses a diversion by Huyang to run away. Thrawn commands the operation from SpaceX headquarters and realizes that Sith Guy is unaccounted for. Just as Ezra and Sabine seem to be outnumbered and cornered, Ahsoka shows up to help them in the most unconvincing way. Ezra and Sabine take out Thrawn's troopers while Ahsoka battles Sith Girl. Thrawn decides to recall the gunships and call off the attack. Boss Lady Morgan doesn't understand why he's letting all of his enemies work together and survive, but Thrawn tells her that it's because they're leaving and Ahsoka is out of time anyways. Just like we saw in the previous episode when the bad guys kept illogically letting Sabine live, Thrawn is once again just like Dr. Evil, always letting Austin Powers live for no apparent reason. In another dumb scene, Sith Girl realizes that the troops have retreated. Ahsoka offers to help her, but she runs away. Finally, there's the world's most lackluster reunion featuring Ahsoka, Sabine, Ezra, and all the turtle Ewoks that come out to celebrate. And then the episode ends. Now let's talk about what I didn't like. Number 1, the writing. Every scene of this show feels completely hollow and devoid of any significance. It always seems like we're watching a lesser carbon copy of Star Wars from back when it was good. And everything we see on screen mostly falls flat. Much like in all the previous episodes we've seen until now, the screenplay just pushes its characters along very clinically so that they can get from A to B, but there's never really a true feeling of clever storytelling, fun, or adventure. Try to compare anything we see here to anything similar from the Lucas era, and this definitely pales in comparison. I think one of the show's biggest issues is that it never really takes time to highlight the relationships between the characters, and even once it attempts to do so, it does so unconvincingly. Number 2, the acting. Ray Stevenson and Lars Mikkelsen are good actors, but they can't save this show, no matter how hard they try. On the other hand, I think that the actors that play Sabine and Ezra are awful. In fact, you could probably find better acting on naughty late-night movies if you know what I mean. These are supposed to be two very close old friends, but you absolutely wouldn't know it from watching this show. Anytime they're on screen, it just feels super cringe. Ahsoka spending most of this show speaking with a robot is also a poor creative choice. Had they brought in David Tennant, who voices Huyang the robot, to play a live-action character on this show instead, perhaps he could have brought some much-needed charisma, charm, and male presence for Rosario Dawson to play off of. But again, Kathleen Kennedy doesn't seem to like men, so somehow they managed to waste another world-class actor here. Again. Number 3, the choreography. The fights here are just so lame and uninspired. Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka's fight scenes are especially bad. In that sense, Lucas was certainly better than Disney in every possible way. His lightsaber battles in the prequels still hold up nicely, and while the battles in the original trilogy were more simple and straightforward, they were at least complemented and anchored by good storytelling with emotional character beats. Disney, with all the money and technology in the world, just can't get this right, which is baffling and continues to annoy me. Even the space battles, which don't necessarily look bad on this show, mostly seem very bland, especially in the parts where they cut to the actors. Number 4, green screen. Ever wonder why anything that happens in this show happens within the confines of a defined circle? Well, it's because of Lucasfilm's obsession with their volume digital green screen room. They refuse to shoot anything on location, and the show once again feels cheap as a result. Every scene has a few actors standing in the same space without really ever exploring different areas. As I've mentioned in the past, the volume is fine to use in some scenes, but when you keep relying on that one technology, the show ends up looking like a video game. If I had to point out anything good in this episode, it's that at least the pacing is a bit quicker this time. But seeing nonsense happen quickly doesn't necessarily make the show any better. It's still bad, but I guess just a bit less snoozy. If I had to give this episode a grade, I would give it a 52 out of 100, which means that it's a fail. Again. What did you think about Ahsoka Episode 7? Did you love it? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.